Focus on yourself and stay silent. What if the single greatest act of rebellion you could commit in the modern world had nothing to do with fighting anyone? What if the most radical, the most powerful, the most transformative thing you could do right now, in a world that is louder and more distracted and more chaotic than it has ever been in human history, was simply this? Focus on yourself and stay silent. Not the silence of someone who has nothing to say. Not the silence of someone who is afraid. Not the silence of someone who has been defeated and retreated into invisibility because the world was too much. The silence of someone who has made a decision. A quiet, unshakable, deeply intentional decision that their energy, their precious, finite, irreplaceable energy, belongs to their own growth first. Before it belongs to any performance. Before it belongs to any audience. Before it belongs to any drama or any chaos or any situation that was never theirs to fix in the first place. This kind of silence is not passive. It is the loudest statement a human being can make without saying a single word. It says, I know where I am going. I know what I am building. I know who I am becoming. And I have decided that none of that requires your commentary, your validation, your permission, or your applause. The Stoics built entire philosophies around this principle.
Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca.
These were not quiet men because they were weak. They were not focused on themselves because they were selfish. They were focused and they were silent because they had discovered something that the majority of the human race spends its entire existence missing. That the real work, the work that actually changes a life, that actually builds something lasting, that actually produces the kind of person who walks into a room and commands respect without demanding it, happens inside. In private. In the still, protected, sacred space between stimulus and response. In the silence. This is wisdom unlocked. And today we are going somewhere that most people are too distracted, too loud, and too afraid to go. Inside. The world wants your attention and your energy. Before we go anywhere else, we need to understand the battlefield. Because make no mistake, and the Stoics would be the first to tell you this, there is a war being waged for your attention every single moment of every single day. And most people are losing it so badly and so consistently that they do not even know they are in a fight. Look at what the modern world has built. An entire technological infrastructure whose sole purpose, whose entire economic model, is built around one thing: keeping you looking outward. Keeping your attention fragmented and scattered and directed everywhere except the one place it could actually transform your life. Inward. Social media was not built to connect you. It was built to capture you. Every notification, every like, every comment, every trending topic, every carefully engineered outrage, these are not accidents. They are precision tools designed by some of the most brilliant minds on the planet with one objective in mind. Keep you scrolling. Keep you reacting. Keep you outside yourself. And it works. With devastating effectiveness. The average person today spends more time consuming other people's lives than living their own. More time reacting to things that have nothing to do with their actual values or their actual goals than they spend building toward them. More time performing a version of themselves for an audience than they spend genuinely being themselves in the quiet moments when no one is watching. And the result is a kind of emptiness that is almost unique to our era. It is the emptiness of constant stimulation, the hollowness of perpetual connection, the strange loneliness of someone who has thousands of followers and does not know who they actually are. Because knowing who you are requires something the modern world does not sell and does not reward. It requires turning the attention around, pointing it inward, removing it from the endless scroll of other people's lives and directing it, with full focus, full commitment, full stoic intentionality, toward your own. Marcus Aurelius faced his own version of this problem. He was the most visible person in the Roman Empire. Every eye was on him. Every decision he made was scrutinized and criticized and celebrated and condemned. He was surrounded by people who wanted things from him: his time, his attention, his authority, his validation. And yet in his private journal, the Meditations, we see a man in constant practice of turning the attention inward. Constant practice of examining his own thoughts, his own beliefs, his own failures, his own growth. A man who understood that everything he had to offer the world, as a leader, as a philosopher, as a human being, was dependent on the quality of the inner life he was cultivating in private. He focused on himself.
Quietly. Relentlessly. Every single day.
And the result was one of the most remarkable human beings who ever lived. Not because the world built him, but because he built himself, from the inside out, in the silence, where no one else could see the work being done. That is what this video is about. And if you are ready, really ready, to understand what this means and what it demands and what it can produce in your life, then let us begin. Chapter 1. What it truly means to focus on yourself. Let us start by clearing away the misunderstanding that stops most people from ever truly embracing this principle. Focusing on yourself is not selfishness. Let me say that again with complete clarity. Focusing on yourself is not selfishness. Selfishness is taking from others for your own gain at their expense. Selfishness is using people. Selfishness is indifference to the suffering of those around you. Selfishness is making yourself the center of a universe that includes other people who matter. Focusing on yourself is none of those things. Focusing on yourself is the disciplined, intentional, stoic practice of becoming the best version of who you are, so that everything you bring to the world, to your relationships, to your work, to your community, is the fullest, most authentic, most genuinely powerful expression of what you have to offer. It is not subtraction from the world. It is addition. It is giving the world a whole person rather than a half-empty shell running on borrowed energy and unexamined beliefs. The Stoics understood this with profound clarity. Epictetus, who had been a slave, who had experienced the most extreme form of external control that exists, taught that the only path to genuine freedom begins with focusing entirely on what is yours to influence. And what is yours to influence? Your own mind, your own character, your own beliefs, your own responses, your own choices, your own growth. Not other people's opinions of you. Not the circumstances you were born into. Not the chaos of the world around you. Not what other people are doing or achieving or thinking or saying. Your own inner world. Full stop. This is what focusing on yourself means in the Stoic tradition. It is not navel-gazing. It is not self-obsession. It is the precise, disciplined direction of your energy and attention toward the only arena in which you have genuine sovereignty. And here is what makes this so powerful and so counterintuitive at the same time. The more you genuinely focus on yourself, on your real growth, your real values, your real development as a human being, the less you need from the world. The less you need to be validated. The less you need to be seen. The less you need the approval that most people spend enormous amounts of energy chasing at the cost of the very thing that would actually make them whole. You become, in the truest and deepest sense, self-sufficient. Not because you do not value connection or community or love, but because you no longer need those things to complete you. You bring a complete self to every relationship. And from that completeness, genuine love, genuine friendship, genuine contribution become possible in a way that need-based connection never can be. Focusing on yourself is the foundation of everything. It is where the real work begins and where the most important results are produced. Chapter 2. The discipline of silence. Silence is perhaps the most misunderstood and undervalued discipline in the entire modern world. We have been taught, implicitly and explicitly, that silence is uncomfortable, that it needs to be filled, that a person who is quiet must be either awkward or unintelligent or hiding something, that the ability to always have something to say is a virtue, and that saying nothing is a kind of weakness. This is completely, entirely, devastatingly wrong. And the Stoics knew it. Epictetus taught that nature gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, that the ratio is intentional, that listening, observing, and remaining silent are twice as valuable as speaking. He warned his students against the compulsive need to fill every silence with words, noting that most speech is not communication but performance. Not the sharing of genuine thought but the anxious display of the self for an audience. True silence, disciplined, chosen, intentional silence, is not empty. It is full. It is packed with perception and awareness and intelligence. It is the state in which you are taking in far more than you could ever take in while talking. When you are silent, you observe. You see what others miss because they are too busy performing to pay attention. You notice the dynamics in a room. You understand people at a depth that only becomes available when you stop broadcasting and start receiving. When you are silent, you think. Not the reactive, surface-level thinking that happens in the middle of a heated exchange, but the deep, unhurried, genuinely creative thinking that requires space and stillness and the absence of the noise that normally interrupts it. When you are silent, you feel. You become aware of what is actually happening inside you. The intuitions, the discomforts, the quiet knowings that are always there beneath the surface but almost never audible above the noise you generate and consume. Marcus Aurelius was famous among those who knew him for the quality of his silence. Not an awkward silence. Not a cold silence. But a settled, observant, deeply present silence that made the people around him feel simultaneously seen and slightly unnerved. Because his silence was not an absence. It was a force. And this is one of the most important things to understand about the discipline of staying silent. Silence is not nothing. It is something. It is presence without performance. It is attention without agenda. It is power without the need to display itself. And in a world where everyone is screaming for attention, where everyone is performing, broadcasting, asserting, reacting, the person who is genuinely, comfortably, powerfully silent stands out in a way that no amount of noise ever could. Because silence commands a room in ways that noise never can. Silence communicates confidence. Silence communicates depth. Silence communicates the settled assurance of someone who does not need the world's constant response to feel sure of who they are. Practice silence. Choose it deliberately. Protect it fiercely. It is one of the most powerful tools available to you. Chapter 3. Stop competing and start building. Here is one of the most energy-draining habits that most people do not even realize they have developed. Comparing themselves to others. It happens almost automatically. You see someone else's achievement and immediately, without any conscious decision, you measure yourself against it. You see someone else's life and you evaluate your own through that lens. You watch someone else move ahead and something tightens in your chest and you find yourself thinking about where you are in relation to where they are. This is comparison. And it is one of the most effective ways the world steals your focus from yourself and redirects it outward, toward other people's journeys, other people's timelines, other people's lives. The Stoics had no patience for comparison of this kind. They understood it for exactly what it is, a distraction from the only race that actually matters. The race with yourself. Marcus Aurelius wrote about the importance of measuring your progress not against other people but against who you were yesterday. Not whether you are ahead of your peers, but whether you are becoming more of what you are capable of becoming. Not whether your results match someone else's, but whether your choices reflect your values. This is an entirely different and infinitely more powerful frame. Because when you are competing with yourself, you always have access to exactly the right opponent. One who knows your specific weaknesses and your specific strengths. One whose timeline is perfectly calibrated to your own development. One whose victories are genuinely yours and whose defeats are genuinely instructive. When you are competing with others, you are almost always operating with false data. You are comparing your behind the scenes to their highlight reel. You are measuring your full reality, with all its mess and struggle and uncertainty, against the curated performance they have chosen to present. It is never an accurate comparison. It is never a fair one. And it never produces anything useful. What it does produce is one of the most destructive emotions available to a human being. Envy. Envy is the belief that someone else's success somehow diminishes yours. That there is a finite amount of achievement available and that what they have taken is unavailable to you. Envy turns other people's wins into personal losses. It makes you the enemy of people who were never your opponents to begin with. And it directs all of your creative, productive, generative energy toward resentment rather than creation. The Stoic alternative is so much more powerful and so much more freeing. Stop watching what others are building. Turn around. Face your own empty field. Pick up your own tools. And start building. Your vision. Your values. Your goals. Your version of the life you want to live. Not faster than someone else. Not better than someone else. Just more fully, more honestly, more consistently yours than it was yesterday. That is the only competition worth your energy. The only comparison worth making. Focus on yourself. Build your own thing. Let others do the same. And watch what becomes possible when you redirect all of that comparative energy toward genuine creation. Chapter 4. The Power of Your Private Hours. There is a question that will tell you almost everything you need to know about the trajectory of your life. What do you do when no one is watching? Not what you post about. Not what you tell people you do. Not what you intend to do or plan to do or aspire to do. What do you actually do in the hours when there is no audience? When there is no performance required? When you could do absolutely anything and no one would know? Those hours are the truest measure of who you are and who you are becoming. Because anyone can perform discipline. Anyone can show up with focus and intention when the cameras are on and the stakes are visible and the crowd is watching. The performance of effort is one of the easiest things in the world to produce. What is rare, what is genuinely rare and genuinely powerful, is the person who does the work in private. Who reads the book when no one knows they are reading. Who goes to bed early when everyone else is out. Who practices the skill, builds the habit, maintains the discipline in the quiet hours when there is absolutely no external reward for doing so. This is what the Stoics called living in accordance with your values regardless of witness. Epictetus taught that the true test of a person's character is what they do when no one is watching. Not what they say about themselves. Not what their reputation suggests. Not what they perform for the people in their lives. What they actually choose in private. Because in private there is no performance incentive. There is only the person you actually are, with all of your genuine commitments and genuine laziness and genuine courage and genuine avoidance, faced with the choice of what to do with the time and energy that is entirely your own. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations in private. He never intended for anyone to read them. They were not a performance of wisdom. They were the actual practice of it. Messy, honest, sometimes repetitive, always sincere. The private journal of a man in genuine dialogue with himself about how to live better. That practice, that private, unglamorous, unperformed practice, is what produced one of the most remarkable philosophical legacies in human history. Not the public performance. The private practice. Your private hours are where your real life is built. Where your real character is forged. Where the gap between who you are right now and who you are capable of becoming is either widened or narrowed. One quiet choice at a time. Guard them. Honor them. Use them with intention. Because what you do when no one is watching is who you are. And who you are is what your life will become. Chapter 5. Let go of the need to be understood. This is one of the hardest lessons in the entire Stoic tradition. And one of the most liberating once you truly grasp it. Not everyone will understand you. Not everyone is supposed to. And spending your energy trying to make them understand is one of the most costly and least productive things you can do with the one life you have been given. Think about how much energy goes into this. The explaining, the justifying, the carefully constructed defenses of decisions that were yours to make without defense. The exhausting effort of trying to help people see you the way you see yourself. And think about how rarely it works. Because the people who are meant to understand you, the ones who are genuinely aligned with who you are and what you are building, will understand you without extensive explanation. Not because they are mind readers, but because there is a resonance, a recognition, a meeting of genuine values and genuine character that communicates itself without needing to be translated. And the people who are not meant to understand you, the ones who are operating from a different set of values, a different level of awareness, a different vision of what life is for, will not understand you no matter how eloquently you explain yourself. This is not a failure of communication. It is simply alignment, or the absence of it. Marcus Aurelius faced profound misunderstanding throughout his life and his reign. He was a philosopher-emperor in a world that expected a warrior. He was a man of deep interior life in a role that demanded constant external performance. He was consistently misread, misrepresented, and underestimated by people who could not comprehend how a man could hold power and practice philosophy simultaneously. And his response, his Stoic response, was not to spend his energy correcting them. It was to keep living in accordance with his values, to keep doing the work, to keep being exactly who he was, with full commitment and zero performance, and to trust that the life he was building would eventually speak for itself in ways that his words never could. This is the ultimate form of self-focus. The ultimate act of staying silent. Not explaining yourself to people who are not ready to understand you. Not adjusting yourself to fit the limited perception of people who cannot yet see the full picture of what you are building.
Just continuing, quietly, powerfully,
in full alignment with your own truth. There is something deeply peaceful about releasing the need to be understood, about accepting that your life is not required to make sense to everyone who observes it, that your choices are not subject to a public approval process, that your values and your vision and your path are yours, uniquely, completely, irrevocably yours, and that their validity does not depend on anyone else's recognition. Let go of the need to be understood. Focus on the need to be true to yourself. That is enough. It is more than enough. It is everything. Chapter 6. The Stoic Approach to Distraction. We need to have a very honest conversation about distraction, because distraction is not just an inconvenience. It is not just a bad habit. In the context of everything we've been discussing today, focusing on yourself, staying silent, doing the private work of genuine transformation, distraction is the enemy. The single most effective weapon that the world has against your growth. And it is important to understand that the world is very good at wielding it. Distraction today comes in forms that are almost impossibly sophisticated. The same technologies that connect us to information and to each other have been specifically engineered to override your self-control, to trigger the most primitive reward centers in your brain, to make the endless consumption of content feel more immediately satisfying than the difficult, uncomfortable, deeply rewarding work of genuine self-development. Your phone is not a neutral tool. Social media is not a neutral space. The content ecosystem is not designed to serve your growth. It is designed to serve its own economic interests, which are advanced every time you scroll, every time you react, every time you click, every time you spend one more minute inside the machine rather than inside your own life. The Stoics could not have imagined the specific forms that distraction takes in the modern world, but they understood its mechanism with complete clarity. Seneca wrote, "Most men ebb and flow in wretchedness between the fear of death and the hardships of life. They are unwilling to live, and yet they do not know how to die. And so they make their life a torment by running from themselves at every opportunity." Running from themselves. That is what distraction is, at its core. Beneath all of the entertainment and the stimulation and the endless content, it is running from the discomfort of being alone with yourself. Running from the quiet where the real questions live. Running from the work that you know needs to be done and that you are not yet ready to face. The Stoic solution is not to demonize distraction or to pretend that the desire for it is a moral failing. The Stoic solution is to understand it clearly, to see it for what it is rather than what it pretends to be, and then to make conscious choices about when and whether to engage with it. Marcus Aurelius wrote about the importance of beginning each day with the question, what is necessary? Not what is comfortable. Not what is entertaining. Not what will earn the approval of others. What is actually necessary for living a life in alignment with my values today? That question, asked honestly, at the start of every day, before the phone is checked and the notifications are consumed and the world rushes in, is one of the most powerful tools you have against distraction. Because most of what you are distracted by is not necessary. Most of what consumes your attention on any given day has nothing to do with who you are trying to become or what you are trying to build. Most of it is noise, compelling, engineered, almost irresistible noise, but noise nonetheless. And noise, however sophisticated, can never build the life that silence and focus can. Choose your focus deliberately. Guard it fiercely. Return to it every time the distraction pulls you away, not with guilt, but with a calm, practiced intention of someone who knows exactly where their attention belongs. Chapter 7. Building something that lasts. Most people are so focused on being seen that they never stop to ask whether what they are building is worth seeing. They spend enormous energy on the performance of building, on looking like someone who is achieving, growing, succeeding, while the actual building receives whatever energy is left over after the performance is done, which is usually very little. And the result is a kind of impressive-looking emptiness. A life that looks good from the outside, the right credentials, the right aesthetic, the right associations. But that feels hollow from the inside because the foundation was never actually laid. Because the real work, the unglamorous, unperformed, deeply private work of building something genuinely solid, was always sacrificed on the altar of looking like you were doing it.
The Stoics were ruthlessly unimpressed by the appearance of virtue.
They were interested only in the real thing. Epictetus taught his students that a philosopher is not someone who talks about philosophy, but someone who lives it. That the measure of your practice is not the sophistication of your explanations, but the quality of your choices. Not the beauty of your theory, but the honesty of your daily practice. And the same principle applies to building any kind of meaningful life. The measure is not what it looks like. It is what it actually is. Is the relationship genuinely loving or just externally harmonious? Is the career genuinely fulfilling or just impressive on paper? Is the personal growth real, reflected in the actual quality of your choices and responses, or is it performed for an audience that you have become more committed to than the growth itself? Focusing on yourself and staying silent creates the conditions in which real building becomes possible. Because when you remove the performance, when you stop building for the audience and start building for the reality, you can finally ask the honest questions. What do I actually want? Not what sounds good to say I want. What do I genuinely, in my quiet, honest moments, want my life to become? What am I actually good at? Not what I perform well. What do I do when I am most aligned? Most natural, most energized, most truly myself? What actually matters to me? Not what I have been told should matter. Not what the culture says is important. What, when I am honest with myself in the silence, genuinely matters to my soul? Those questions, and the honest answers to them, are the blueprint for something real. Something lasting. Something that will still feel like yours 20 years from now because it was built from the inside out rather than from the outside in. Build in private. Build honestly. Build for the long term. And trust that what is genuinely and honestly built will eventually stand in a way that no performance ever could.
Chapter 8. The gift of your own company.
Here is something that most of the modern world has completely forgotten how to do.
Enjoy being alone.
Not tolerating it. Not surviving it. Not filling every moment of it with content and music and social media to make it bearable. Actually enjoying it. Finding genuine richness and renewal and pleasure in the company of your own mind. This might sound simple, and yet for millions of people, perhaps most people in the modern world, genuine solitude is one of the most uncomfortable experiences available. The moment the silence settles in, the anxiety rises. The moment there is nothing to stimulate or entertain or distract, something that feels like dread begins to surface. And so the phone comes out. The music goes on. The podcast starts. Anything, absolutely anything, to fill the silence and avoid the discomfort of being genuinely alone with oneself. But the Stoics saw something in that discomfort that most people miss. They saw that the discomfort of solitude is not a sign that you should avoid it. It is a sign that you need it most. Because what surfaces in the silence, what rises when the stimulation stops and the performance ends and you are left with nothing but your own unfiltered experience, is the truth. The actual state of your inner life. The real thoughts, the real feelings, the real questions that live beneath the noise you generate to avoid them. And truth, even uncomfortable truth, is always more valuable than the comfortable distraction that keeps it at bay. Marcus Aurelius actively sought solitude. Not because he was antisocial. Not because he disliked people. He was a deeply relational man who clearly valued the people in his life. But he understood, from direct experience, that the quality of every relationship, every decision, every action he took in the world was directly dependent on the quality of the time he spent alone with himself. He needed to know his own mind before he engaged with other minds. He needed to clarify his own values before he navigated the competing values of others. He needed the solitude not as a retreat from life, but as the foundation from which his fullest engagement with life was possible. And here is what genuine solitude, practiced regularly, embraced rather than endured, gives you. It gives you yourself back. The self that gets scattered by the demands of daily life. The self that gets fractured by the constant input of other people's needs and opinions and energies. The self that gets buried under the roles you play and the performances you maintain and the endless accommodations you make to keep the world around you comfortable. In solitude, that self reassembles. In silence, it remembers what it knows. In the privacy of your own company, genuine, unhurried, unperformed, You return to yourself in a way that nothing else makes possible. Learn to love your own company. Not as a consolation for the absence of others, but as a genuine, chosen, deeply nourishing practice that makes you more whole, more clear, more powerful in every area of your life. You are worth spending time with. Start treating your own company as the privilege it actually is. Chapter 9. When your silence speaks louder than words. There is a particular kind of power that most people in the modern world have almost entirely lost access to. The power of restraint. The power of having something to say and choosing not to say it. Of knowing what someone deserves to hear and deciding that your energy is better spent elsewhere. Of having the ability to react and choosing instead to respond. Or, most powerfully of all, choosing to do nothing at all. This is not weakness. It is arguably the most advanced form of strength available to a human being. Seneca wrote that the mark of a great mind is the ability to disagree with something without the compulsion to immediately announce that disagreement. That wisdom knows when speaking adds value and when it simply adds noise. Think about how much of what you say on any given day actually needs to be said. How much of your commentary, your reactions, your opinions shared in real time, how much of it is genuinely necessary? How much of it serves your values and your relationships and your growth? And how much of it is simply the reflexive output of a mind that has been trained to react to everything immediately and without filter? The discipline of staying silent, of choosing restraint, is about becoming someone who speaks with intention rather than impulse. Whose words carry weight because they are not diluted by constant, thoughtless output. Who understands that every word spoken is a withdrawal from a finite account of credibility and attention, and who manages that account with the same wisdom they would apply to any other valuable resource. In practical terms, this means staying out of arguments that do not matter. Not every disagreement deserves your engagement. Not every provocation deserves your response. Not every person who challenges your choices or questions your values or criticizes your decisions deserves the gift of your time and energy. Most of them deserve your silence. Not the silence of someone who has nothing to say. The silence of someone who has decided that saying it would cost more than it is worth. Marcus Aurelius was tested constantly in this area. As emperor, he was surrounded by people who were wrong, by situations that were unjust, by provocations that were deeply personal. He had more reason than most to react, and more power than anyone to do so. And yet the Meditations reveal a man in constant practice of restraint. Constant practice of choosing the considered response over the immediate reaction. Of asking, what does wisdom require here? Not what does my emotion demand? What does wisdom require? That question changes everything. Because wisdom almost never requires the immediate, unfiltered, emotionally driven response. Wisdom almost always counsels pause, consideration, silence when silence serves better than speech. Practice restraint. Practice the discipline of choosing when your silence serves you better than your words. Practice the profound, mature, deeply stoic art of letting things pass that do not require your engagement. And watch how your presence in the world begins to carry a different quality. A heavier, more grounded, more genuinely authoritative quality. The quality of someone who speaks because they have something worth saying. Not because they could not stop themselves. Chapter 10. The life that focus and silence builds. We have come a long way in this conversation. And now I want to paint you a picture of what the life on the other side of all of this actually looks like. Because the disciplines we've been discussing, focusing on yourself, staying silent, building in private, releasing the need to be understood, practicing solitude, choosing restraint, these are not ends in themselves. They are means. They are the practices that produce a specific kind of life. And that life is worth describing. Because I think most people have forgotten that it is possible. Or have never been shown what it looks like in reality rather than in theory. It is the life of someone who wakes up in the morning and knows exactly who they are. Not a performed identity. Not a role maintained for an audience. The real, examined, honestly known self that was built through years of private practice and quiet commitment. It is the life of someone whose relationships are deep rather than broad. Who has fewer connections but more genuine ones. Who brings their full, unperformed, completely present self to every meaningful relationship, and who receives the same in return. Because like attracts like. And the person who has done the work of becoming whole attracts other whole people. It is the life of someone whose work is genuinely theirs, built on real strengths, driven by real values, directed toward real meaning. Not impressive for the sake of impressing, meaningful for the sake of meaning, aligned with who they actually are rather than with who the world told them to be. It is the life of someone who moves through the world with a quality that is almost impossible to manufacture. A settled, grounded, deeply rooted quality that comes from knowing yourself completely, the light and the shadow, and having made peace with the whole of it. This quality has many names: presence, authority, gravitas, charisma. But beneath all of those names, it is really just one thing. The unmistakable quality of a person who is actually, genuinely, completely themselves. And people can feel it. They feel it the moment you walk in. They feel it in the weight of your silence and the intention of your words. They feel it in the ease with which you hold your boundaries and the clarity with which you state your values. They feel it in the complete absence of the anxiety that attends performance, the subtle desperation of someone who needs to be seen in a certain way. There is nothing quite as magnetic as a person who simply does not need you to see them in any particular way, because they already see themselves clearly. And that clarity, that private, hard-won, quietly held self-knowledge, is everything. It is the foundation on which every other good thing in a human life is built. Marcus Aurelius built this life. Not perfectly. His journals show us a man in constant struggle, constant revision, constant honest reckoning with his own failings. But committed. Absolutely, daily, quietly committed to the practice of becoming more fully himself. And from that commitment, from that private, unperformed, ongoing dedication to his own inner life, he produced a public legacy that has endured for nearly 2,000 years. Not because he was trying to produce a legacy, but because he was trying to live rightly, in private, in silence, with full focus on the only thing he could actually control, himself. That is the life that focus and silence builds. And it is available to you, right now, starting today, with one simple, radical, profoundly powerful decision: to turn the attention around, to focus on yourself, and to stay silent while you build. If this video reached something real in you, if something in these words found the part of you that has been waiting to be found, then I have one simple request. Subscribe to Stoic Ascension. Because what we are building here is not just a channel. It is a community. A community of people who have made the decision, quietly, deliberately, without announcement, to take their own lives seriously, to do the real work, to go past the surface and into the depth where the actual transformation happens. Every single week we bring the ancient wisdom of the Stoics to bear on the real, modern, deeply human challenges you are actually facing. The challenge of staying focused in a world designed to scatter your attention. The challenge of knowing yourself in a world designed to tell you who to be. The challenge of building something real in a world that rewards performance over substance. We go deep here. We go honest. We go into the places that most content is too comfortable to go. And if that is what you are looking for, if you are ready for a channel that treats your growth as seriously as you are beginning to treat it, then hit that subscribe button right now. Hit the bell so you never miss a lesson that could change the way you see yourself and the world you are navigating. And if this video spoke to something true in you, if it moved something, shifted something, opened something, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Someone in your life who is scattered, who is lost in the noise, who has forgotten that the most important work they can do is the quiet, private, focused work of becoming more fully themselves. Send it to them. Be the person who puts the right words in front of someone at exactly the right moment. That is what this community does for each other. Thank you for being here. Thank you for choosing this. Depth over noise, focus over distraction, silence over performance. Thank you for choosing yourself. Now go do the work. In private, in silence, with everything you have. We will see you in the next one.